Okay, so this is take two. I had to go and put a white t-shirt on to go do this because I realised I couldn't actually get most of the interesting bits of the rod to show up. So just to give you an update on where I am with this sort of restoration, renovation of this Shakespeare Mach 2 Boron. I've completed all of the whipping, and I've also put all of the epoxy coating on there. It's come up pretty well. So if I just sort of show and talk through maybe a few little bits. Tip section, we can see here this is the original. I didn't change this. Then all of the whipping now to replace the eyes, that's all what I've done. I'm really pleased with the way that's come up. This is where the splice is, so this is where the carbon fibre boron ends, and then in here is the fiberglass. This gets really fine, and I found it really quite challenging to get these Seymo RDX eyes rings onto this. Some cases I actually had to literally whip one end, then do the next, and then redo, because I just couldn't get the rings tight enough. Didn't feel that they were on there good enough. But I got there in the end. All of these have just had one coat of the, I'm using the Seymo epoxy that I previously used, and they've all had just one layer on there. I feel it's come up pretty well. Middle section, pretty much the same. So previously what I said was that as I'd started to strip them down and take the old original rings off, the wire rings off, I'd taken the burgundy maroon whippings off and kept the yellow on there. And I did that for everything on the middle section except for this one. So on this one I did the yellow gold, and I did the maroon burgundy. But then every other one, and for all of the tip section, I did only the maroon, and the yellow is the original, and that was sort of like my marker. And that sort of went quite well. So yeah, then if we get down to the butt section, so this included the new handle. So this is the original handle, and this is obviously the Fuji locking one that I've put on. I cleaned this up. I used that white magic foam, the sort of solid blocks that you can buy. It's used for cleaning. I think it's called melamine foam. You can also buy it on eBay pretty cheap, or get it from Tesco's. So I use that to clean it up, use it wet, literally stand it up in the sink, and then literally I'm rubbing it, and it's just astonishing the crud that comes off a 35-year-old rod handle. Yeah, but it's come up pretty well. This is the section where there was that step, and so I whipped. I decided, rather than just running up there all the way in black, that I would actually put in a bit of decor. I was kind of exercising my ambitions a little bit to see what I could do with my whipping skills. I'm reasonably pleased with it. Finished it up to this. You can see the hook keeper obviously finished it up to where that step was. It's still there, but it's not really noticeable, I don't think. This has had 3 coats of epoxy on it. It's okay, it's not brilliant, but I think it's as good as I'm going to get it, knowing that I was actually turning this by hand. I don't have a rod dryer. I did find out that the thinner was definitely better. The idea of slathering it on only really works when there's a rod dryer to actually rotate the rod continually through the drying process, but that's okay. And then the other 2 have come up pretty well as well, so all told I'm pretty happy with it. So next things, which I think are the final things I want to do for this rod, I'm going to refinish it. but not entirely, only in the areas where it sort of needs covering up, improving, whatever. And a good example is right here. So the original handle came up to here, and then this section here was originally, it was just whipped in the same sort of original burgundy colour, just for decoration purposes. So I stripped that back, and I've then carefully sanded really fine, wet and dry, to get it back. So I don't think there's any trace of that original top coat on there, but it's dull. There's a couple of other sections where there's a few little chips and dings. One of the sections sort of between the rings on one of the other sections, sort of up between here where I was scraping, is actually damaged the original, this finish. I don't know what this finish is. This is an old rod, right? So it could have been some kind of varnish, I don't know. So I'm going to do something about that, and to do that I'm actually going to use this stuff, which is white Gorilla Glue, and although it says it's white, it actually dries clear, and it dries clear and it dries rock hard, and it's been used for years for the guys that make and restore sort of wooden split cane fishing rods. And the approach is a little bit like finishing musical instruments, guitars, which is sort of another one of my hobbies, where you literally wipe it on and then wipe it off, leave a really, really thin coat, let it dry. If you want to, you add more and more and more, but just, it's patience, but it can give a really nice polished finish. This white, it's got to be the white. That's important. It's not readily available in Europe. It is available, you've got to find it. I found it available on Amazon. I also found it available with a couple of shops that specialise in selling stuff for remote control cars, drones, that kind of stuff, because it's just a really good glue, which is a little bit easier to work with than, say, super glue. Yeah. So yeah, that was a tip I got online, and we'll see how that goes. The other thing which I want to do is I want to tidy up the gaps in this handle. So I guess, you know, this is a 35-year-old rod. It's got worn, and there's some indentations. I'm guessing the cork's dried out. So I'm going to fill some of this up a bit just to make it look a bit nicer. And if you've seen on my other videos, I also, the one where I showed in detail how to put one of these onto an older style rod, I actually had some damage in this section, so that needs to be filled as well. So I've got a couple of little filling jobs that I need to do, and I've decided that the way I'm going to do this is I'm actually going to make up a paste, which is going to be based on using this, which is cork sawdust or cork dust. And I made this up myself, and this was actually from the bits that I took off this Mach 2 Boron rod, and I literally filed it down using a rasp. I nearly lost one of my fingers doing it, but I used this very, very sharp rasp called a Shinto rasp. I picked it up when I used to live in Japan. Grind it down to a very, very fine powder. I'm going to mix it with this. This is actually a type of EVA glue. So you can, you know, it's like white wood glue, but I just happen to use this. I use this as a colour fastener for underneath the epoxy on whippings. Yeah, so I put a diluted coat. This is what I use, actually, rather than this stuff which I've talked about before. Even though this is also EVA as well. So I'm going to mix the two together, make a paste, and then I'm going to use that paste to fill those holes up. Let it go hard, leave it probably overnight, sand it down, and then that should be the handle done. I do both the sort of the tidying, the refinishing using the glue, and also the filling of the handle. I'm going to do on two separate videos, but I just really want to use this to bring up to speed with where we are over the last few days.